From the vantage point of the Galactic Concord's vast observation network, Earth appeared ordinary. It was, after all, just one of thousands of life-bearing planets catalogued by the Central Archives. Its dominant species, humans, had emerged a mere blink ago in cosmic terms. Concord archivists noted their technological achievements with faint interest, primitive by the standards of the core worlds, but sufficient to earn them a low-priority monitoring designation. Earth's many conflicts and rapid industrialization drew occasional commentary from alien historians who found the planet's constant turmoil an amusing curiosity. Humans, they'd note, seem uniquely driven by their disagreements. While other species devoted millennia to careful, steady advancement, the people of Earth often made their most significant leaps forward during periods of upheaval. Wars that threatened to destroy them instead led to breakthroughs in energy production, transportation, communication, and medicine. To the Concord, such frenetic growth seemed chaotic. The steady march of progress on their own homeworlds had taken millions of years. Why rush? What was the point of constant reinvention when stability brought peace? To them, the humans' frenzied pace of development appeared self-destructive. And yet, for all the turmoil, humanity survived, thrived. Even. This cycle of crisis and recovery was their pattern, and the Concord was content to watch from afar, bemused and unthreatened. The problem was that the Concord misunderstood what they were seeing. They assumed humanity's progress came in spite of their constant conflicts, not because of it. The notion that innovation could be a response to adversity didn't fit their models of civilization. They dismissed Earth as a chaotic backwater, never considering what might happen if those same resourceful, relentless beings ever focused their energies outward. On Earth, no one suspected they were under watch. Life proceeded as it always had. Tense, inventive, sometimes violent, and always changing. As far as humanity knew, they were alone in the cosmos, unremarkable except to themselves. The concept of galactic politics or alien alliances wasn't even a consideration. But among a few species that paid closer attention, those who looked beyond the Concord's dismissive stance, there was a quiet unease. The Yalshiri, for example, were a methodical species with a reputation for long-term planning. One of their forward-thinking analysts, a data specialist named SciFi, spent decades compiling Earth's historical patterns. What he found left him unsettled. Humans weren't just surviving their wars and crises. They were learning from them, growing stronger each time. Unlike the Yalshiri, who approached advancement through careful, incremental steps, the humans thrived on uncertainty, turning disasters into opportunities at a pace SciFi had never seen before. In his final report to his superiors, SciFi wrote, "It is a mistake to think of humanity as primitive. Their technological baseline may currently be low, but their capacity for rapid adaptation far exceeds that of most Concord species. Should their reach ever extend beyond their own solar system, the implications could be profound. They possess a quality we rarely see. They are driven not by complacency, but by challenge. And the galaxy is full of challenges." Most of his peers dismissed his warning as alarmist. What threat could a single species pose in a galaxy of ancient civilizations? SciFi's report was filed away in a neglected database, forgotten for decades. But the data remained, quietly waiting to be rediscovered just as Earth's potential waited, unnoticed, beneath the surface of an unassuming planet. The chain of events that would alter the galaxy forever began not with malice, but with the simple, blunt calculus of greed. The Drax Empire, one of the older and more self-assured members of the Galactic Concord, was always on the lookout for untapped resources to feed its expansive industrial network. For centuries, the Drax had built a reputation as shrewd opportunists, rarely engaging in direct war, preferring to exploit empty systems through what they called strategic procurement. When their surveyors flagged a star system rich in rare minerals, no alarms were raised. The data indicated no significant technological presence, just a scattering of automated beacons and a small cluster of artificial satellites orbiting one of the system's inner planets. A standard expeditionary fleet was dispatched, accompanied by a few auxiliary ships tasked with setting up a mining operation. To the Dracs, it was business as usual. What their surveyors had failed to recognize, or more likely, had dismissed as insignificant, was that the beacons belonged to Earth. Human engineers, having recently mastered the art of interplanetary travel and resource extraction, had established several outposts in their own solar system. They were not the grand interstellar colonies of the Concorde species, but small, sturdy installations built with the same spirit of adaptability that had characterized human development for centuries. One of these outposts, perched on the edge of the mineral-rich system, was still actively manned, and it happened to be on high alert when the Drax fleet arrived. From the human perspective, it was an invasion. The Drax ships swept into the system, broadcasting curt messages in a language humans couldn't decipher, and proceeded to establish orbital control. The outpost's crew, a skeleton team of engineers and security personnel, scrambled to understand what was happening. All they could determine from their sensors was that the ships were far larger and more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered. The Dracs expected compliance. On their border worlds, a few demonstrations of force had always been enough to convince less developed species to stand down. Their ships maintained a calm formation, their weapon systems unpowered. A show of dominance meant to awe rather than provoke. After all, what primitive species would dare engage them? What they didn't anticipate was the human response. Outmatched though they were, the outpost's crew worked frantically to adapt. Within hours, they had reprogrammed their satellites originally designed for scanning and data relay into makeshift missile platforms. Using what little firepower they had, they launched a volley at the closest Drax ship, taking it by surprise and dealing significant damage. The rest of the fleet reeled in confusion. Back on Earth, news of the alien presence spread rapidly. Governments and military agencies across the planet threw their resources into a frantic, ad hoc campaign. Hackers and engineers repurposed satellites into defensive weapons. Commercial rocket companies shifted production lines to churn out makeshift combat drones. Nations with histories of mutual distrust suddenly pooled their expertise, not out of unity, but out of sheer necessity. The aliens were here, and humanity's only chance was to outthink and outmaneuver a foe that clearly had the technological upper hand. The Dracs responded with a swift counterattack. Their advanced warships turned their full attention to the human defenses, expecting to neutralize them quickly. But every time they adjusted their tactics, the humans did the same. They used guerrilla-like strategies in space, launching hit-and-run assaults, improvising weapons from mining equipment, and setting traps with reprogrammed satellites. Within days, the situation had devolved into a chaotic, asymmetrical conflict. For the first time in centuries, a Drax fleet found itself on the back foot. One of their commanders, an old veteran who had seen dozens of border skirmishes, noted in his battle log, "They do not fight like a species accustomed to defeat. Every strike, every countermeasure, reveals something new. These humans learn." The humans, too, were learning. In the heat of battle, they discovered the limitations of their own technology and found ways to overcome them. By the time the Drax fleet finally withdrew, leaving a trail of wreckage in their wake, humanity had not only defended their outpost, but had gained valuable insights into their own potential. They had fought off a force far superior to them, not through sheer power, but by thinking faster, adapting quicker, and taking risks no other species would have dared. It was a pivotal moment. The Drax, humiliated, quietly revised their strategies. They would return with greater force, determined to reassert their dominance. But the Galactic Concorde had taken notice. What was supposed to be a simple resource grab had become a costly embarrassment, and in the process, humanity's existence was no longer an idle curiosity. The Concorde's central archives updated Earth's designation from low priority to potentially destabilizing. For humanity, the battle was a desperate defense. For the rest of the galaxy, it was something far more troubling. A first glimpse at the kind of species humans truly were. The humiliation of the first skirmish with humanity did not sit well with the Drax Empire. To them, the loss was more than a strategic failure. It was an affront to their pride. The Drax prided themselves on their military superiority, honed over centuries of calculated campaigns and firm political dominance. The idea that a fledgling species from a single-system world could thwart their expeditionary fleet was inconceivable. The Empire's response was swift and calculated. They sent a full battle group, one that had faced and crushed resistance on countless fringe worlds. This fleet boasted state-of-the-art warships, highly trained strategists, and an arsenal of weapons that could tear apart entire planets. The Dracs reasoned that humans might have been clever in a small skirmish, but they couldn't possibly stand against a coordinated military offensive. On Earth, the tension was palpable. The victory in the first battle hadn't gone unnoticed by the people. For the first time, humanity knew it wasn't alone, and that the universe wasn't a welcoming frontier, but a dangerous, competitive arena. Governments moved quickly to prepare for the next encounter. Defense budgets swelled, treaties were hastily signed, and massive construction projects sprang up in orbit and on the moon. Engineers and scientists began testing experimental technology that previously only existed as half-finished prototypes. Every military and scientific mind on the planet knew the next wave of alien ships wouldn't just be larger, they'd be smarter, better equipped, and far more lethal. When the Drax battle group arrived in the solar system, they were ready for overwhelming victory. Their commanders, stationed on their immense, fortress-like motherships, anticipated another brief engagement before returning home as heroes. Their formations were tighter, their assault plans more detailed. They moved in with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, prepared to dismantle whatever feeble resistance the humans had cobbled together. What they found was not a species waiting to be crushed, but a people who had learned from every mistake and built upon every success. Human ingenuity, long a hidden force driving their progress, now revealed itself in full. They had transformed their rudimentary spacecraft into agile, well-coordinated attack squadrons. Their planetary defenses were no longer ad hoc collections of satellites, but integrated networks of powerful, purpose-built platforms. Most shockingly of all, their drones and automated systems seemed to adapt mid-battle, altering their tactics as if they were alive. The Dracs were the first to notice something deeply unsettling. Humans didn't just innovate between battles, they did so during combat. The Drax's initial assault, a carefully planned bombardment of Earth's orbital stations, met stiff resistance. When their first wave of fighters encountered human squadrons, they were surprised at how quickly the humans adjusted. Within minutes, the humans switched from head-on engagements to swarm tactics, overwhelming even the Drax's advanced targeting systems. When Drax destroyers shifted to long-range bombardment, the humans countered by deploying clouds of autonomous drones, forming self-repairing barriers that rendered entire missile barrages ineffective. The battle group, larger and more powerful than anything humanity had faced before, found itself in a brutal, drawn-out conflict. Ships that should have been untouchable were outflanked by small, fast human vessels. Advanced targeting systems were disrupted by human-engineered electromagnetic pulses. Entire Drax formations were decimated by trap-like strategies that the humans seemed to devise on the spot. This was not supposed to happen. In every scenario the Drax had predicted, humanity would crumble under superior firepower. Instead, the humans were forcing them into prolonged, costly engagements. What the Drax had failed to account for was humanity's unique relationship with adversity. While the Drax military had spent centuries perfecting a rigid hierarchy of command and well-tested tactical doctrines, humanity had spent centuries adapting to chaos. Each defeat in their own history had taught them new ways to fight. Each enemy had forced them to think differently. War was not something that destroyed human potential. It unleashed it. For every Drax ship that fell, the human fleet became more coordinated, more efficient. Their improvised technology grew more refined with each encounter. By the time the Drax commanders realized their mistake, it was too late. The human defenses, what they had once dismissed as scattered and disorganized, had evolved into a formidable fighting force. When the battered remnants of the Drax battle group finally retreated, the outcome was clear. Humanity had not only survived, they had risen to meet the challenge and emerged stronger than before. The Galactic Concorde, watching from afar, found itself facing an uncomfortable truth. Humans were no longer a species to be observed with mild curiosity. They had proven themselves capable of defeating one of the most powerful militaries in the galaxy, not by matching their enemies' technology, but by outthinking and outmaneuvering them at every turn. For the Drax, the cost was more than military resources. It was credibility. Across the galaxy, whispers began to circulate among Concorde members. What if humans decided to expand beyond their solar system? What if their next battles weren't in defense, but in conquest? For the first time, the galaxy began to feel an unshakable sense of foreboding. Humanity was no longer just another emerging species. They were something new, something no one had seen before, a threat that could not be anticipated. In the aftermath of the Drax's defeat, the galaxy found itself staring down an uncomfortable truth. Humanity, once dismissed as an unremarkable newcomer, was something far more dangerous. Word spread rapidly through the sprawling networks of the Galactic Concorde. Even those species who had long ignored Earth now quietly tuned in to updates from the Terran system. Analysts and strategists from the Concorde's most advanced civilizations pored over reports, examining every aspect of the human response, how they'd built their defenses, how they adapted in real time, how their unpredictable tactics had unraveled Drax formations. On Earth, the mood was more complicated. Victory brought a sense of relief and validation, but also deep uncertainty. Humanity had achieved something extraordinary, but at great cost and in terrifying circumstances. People celebrated in the streets, even as governments scrambled to assess what it all meant. For decades, humans had speculated about alien life. Now they knew it existed and that it could be hostile. The conflict forced humanity to confront questions it had never seriously considered. Was Earth ready for the wider galaxy? Could they trust any of the other species out there? And what would it mean to defend their home not just once, but perhaps for centuries to come? Leaders argued. Scientists accelerated their research into alien technology. Militaries remained on high alert, even as diplomats tried, with limited success, to open channels of communication to the Concorde. Humanity had survived 2 battles, but they were keenly aware that they'd only glimpsed the surface of what lay beyond. Meanwhile, the Drax Empire, reeling from its losses, slunk into an uneasy silence. Publicly, their leaders dismissed the encounter as a minor setback. Privately, they launched a massive internal review of their military doctrine, desperate to understand how an inferior species had outmaneuvered them so thoroughly. For the first time in living memory, the Drax found themselves holding back not because they lacked the resources to retaliate, but because they feared what might happen if they failed again. For a proud empire accustomed to easy dominance, the thought of another humiliation at human hands was almost too much to bear. The rest of the galaxy responded cautiously. Many Concorde members debated whether Earth should be formally contacted, welcomed into the galactic community under careful supervision. But fear overshadowed every discussion. What if the humans misinterpreted diplomacy as a threat? What if they learned too quickly, adapted too well, and grew too powerful? The mere idea of teaching them advanced technologies, of sharing access to galactic resources, made some species nervous. In the Concorde's grand halls, whispers turned to heated arguments. The once dismissed planet was now the center of countless strategic calculations. Among the Concorde's many factions, the Yalshari stood out. Their analysts had been among the first to raise the alarm about humanity's potential. Their old reports, once archived and ignored, were now read with mounting unease. Sashkari's observations seemed prophetic. Humans didn't rise to power the way most species did, through centuries of slow and steady development. They leapt forward in bursts, spurred on by conflict. Every skirmish, every challenge became fuel for their innovation. The Yalshari, with their methodical, long-term planning, recognized a pattern. Humans had a knack for turning adversity into strength. It was this quality more than their technology, more than their numbers, that made them so dangerous. Over time, a kind of tense equilibrium settled into place. The Drax remained silent, licking their wounds. The Concorde monitored Earth carefully, but made no official overtures. And humanity, while continuing to prepare for a possible return of the Drax, also turned its gaze inward, debating its place in a galaxy that now seemed both promising and perilous. But beneath this fragile peace lay an undercurrent of fear. The galaxy had seen species rise before, but none like this. Humanity's rapid adaptation and resilience had already shattered one of the Concorde's most reliable assumptions: that emerging civilizations needed millennia to reach parity with established powers. Humans didn't follow the pattern. They forged their own path. They improvised. They took risks that no other species would dare consider. The result was a species that had stood its ground not once, but twice, against an empire that should have crushed them. And so the galaxy held its breath. Every alien species that had brushed off humanity now watched carefully, wondering when and if the humans would turn their attention outward. Would they remain defensive, guarding their world and its immediate surroundings? Or would they, like so many others before them, look to the stars for expansion and conquest? For now, humanity seemed content to focus on its own survival, to strengthen its defenses, and to learn as much as possible from its alien neighbors, though at a cautious distance. Yet the lingering question haunted everyone from the Concorde's ruling council to the smallest mining outposts on the galactic fringe. What would happen if humans ever decided to go to war again, not in defense, but on their own terms? No one could be sure, but no one wanted to find out.